This is WOMM operating out of Burlington, Vermont, 105.9 The Radiator. It's the Rocket Shop. I'm your host, Tom Proctor, and with me tonight is Aram Bedrosian. Hello.
Hey,
I got your second name right. Didn't mispronounce it at all, did I?
I think you were good, Aram.
I'm good?
Yep.
Excellent. Well, I'm really keen to hear you play. We usually kick it off with a song, so what have you got for us?
This is Weightless from my second album, A Dark Light.
Sweet. Well, please take it away.
Okay, thank you.
Weightless, that by Aram Bedrosian. That was incredible.
Oh, thank you so much.
Yeah, I've never seen really a bass played in this manner that you just played that. So yeah, that was quite the experience.
Oh, I really appreciate that.
Yeah. So you're obviously very well known in bass circles. Seen a few reviews written about you in various magazines. You've worked with some incredible musicians as well. But tell us first a little bit about your background, kind of where you're from, and when did you first start picking this up and realizing you had an incredible talent for it?
Yeah, so actually, I was born in Burlington, Vermont. My father was from Armenia, my mother was from sort of rural Vermont, and grew up a very normal kind of Vermont life. And then when I was 12 or 13, one of my friends wanted to start a band and was like, Aram, why don't you play bass? And so that was how that started. And of course, at that time, I was still basically a child. So my parents bought me a really used, junky thing, but I loved it. It had stickers and BB holes, and it was just trashed, but it was great. $50. And I'm left-handed, but it was a right-handed bass, so I play right-handed because that's how I learned. And then, it just felt so good to me right away. I just connected with the instrument fast. I loved being in the band with my friends. And then just sort of at the time, the bass guitar was really exploding in a lot of directions. This was like Primus and Flea and Red Hot Chili Peppers. These things were really on the forefront of music and making their way into popular music. And MTV was playing this stuff. So, like the album Frizzle Fry by Primus was just like, when I was young, it was like my life goal to learn how to play those songs. And so I spent a lot of time woodshedding and just playing and just over the course of high school, I was in a band that I loved, and that's really how I learned how to play. And then in college, I played a lot of gigs with a lot of people. I was lucky enough to do that. And so I was self-taught for a long time, which is, I think it allowed me to sort of learn some free approaches to technique. And then in college, I studied like classical theory and jazz improvisation and stuff, but I had already sort of gone wild in my head in terms of the creativity. So I'd always tinkered with solo stuff because when you practice, you're usually alone. But it's funny because now what I'm best known for is definitely the solo material. And people ask me, they're like, well, have you ever played in a band? And it's like, well, yeah, the first 20 years I played, that's all I did. But I actually hurt my hand like 15 years ago. And I was like, well, if my hand recovers, I'm going to make an album of my own, because I hadn't done that. And it just so happened that the bass is the musical tool that I'm most comfortable with. So it ended up being a solo album, really not necessarily on purpose, but I loved the challenge of trying to make an album. And I'm definitely not a lot of people have made solo bass music. Well, not a lot, but certainly I wasn't the first. And there are a lot of wonderful artists who did this before me. But yeah, I just wanted to make something that was functional as a musical album that someone who didn't play bass could listen to. So I worked really hard on that first album and was lucky enough to get some great reviews, and was putting out videos at the same time when YouTube was growing, so I got some attention that way. And at this point, I worked a long time on my second album and had a really nice bass made, and at this point I've been so fortunate, and I've connected with so many people through the music, and I get incredible feedback all over the place from players and non-players alike. So it's been an incredible ride. And then you sort of, you look up and you remember that 12-year-old kid who was dreaming of learning how to play Stone Cold Bush, and then it's like, oh wow, I learned how to do that at some point. So anyway, that's a little bit of the story.
Yeah, do you still have the bass, the $50 BB?
Oh, I wish
pellet?
I did. I had to sell it because it was like at the time when it was time to upgrade, I didn't have the money to just keep the old one, and I didn't realize, that it would be. I wish I had, but I do still have my first amp.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, that my parents bought me when I was 12. That day I started playing in a store in the Burlington Square Mall, it was called back then. So anyway, it's kind of cool.
Well, I'm glad you still got the amp, even not got the bass. Yeah, you mentioned a little bit about your first album there, and that really kind of launched into the stratosphere, from what I understand, in terms of being able to connect with these kind of international musicians, household names. So tell me a little bit about the reception and from that album, and what were your expectations about this album going into it? Did you expect the kind of outcome that you ended up receiving?
No, not really. I was trying to focus on the craft of the songs and I was just thinking about making something that I would be proud of at the end of my life or down the road. So I wasn't really thinking about the reception. I mean, of course you hope that the music connects because it's a form of communication and you're trying to speak with to me the notes are words, and you say things, and you say things because you have to say them, and then when it resonates with other human beings, it's just miraculous. So when the first album was received as well as it was, and I was getting these reviews and I was hearing from these people, it was extremely humbling. It was something. Yeah. And
so as the audience know, who have you played with that they may have heard of, and that you find the best people that you've played with, who really have stuck out for you?
Yeah, well, I was lucky enough, and I'm still sort of quasi in a band with John Fishman from Fish, and that was incredible because I grew up listening to that band. And Gordon Stone, who actually just tragically passed away very recently, was a banjo player who was very well known, and he was sort of the first gig that I had as sort of a side man that was really kind of took me out and took me on tour. And then I've done tons of shows with folks like Buckethead and just a lot of people that I've sort of shared evenings with that have been incredible, and it's all kind of a blur. But yeah, just very, very fortunate to have connected with and a lot of people, like big figures in the bass world that I've met and I've played with at this point. So it's been something.
Yeah, I can imagine. On that kind of like level, especially because you still have regular contact with John Fishman, we've been talking to a lot of local musicians about how badly COVID has affected it's local music. You know, it's just really difficult to go out and be able to see a band. You might be able to see one outside. It's going to be way harder in the winter. How's this? What's the effect that's happening on a kind of a bit of a higher level, on a bit of like a touring band kind of level? Do you know at all?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's well, it's obviously put everything on hold, and it's affected a lot of the. You know, everybody sort of sees the top surface, the musicians themselves and the bands, but there's a whole infrastructure, of course, of technicians and roadies who've been affected, and everybody's really itching to get back out on the road. And it's an interesting time because music is such a powerful tool for healing that, of course, it's persevered, and people are finding ways to play and finding ways to listen. But there is no substitute for really being in the same room with people and feeling that energy and telling that story in person, speaking to people in the room through the instruments and through the music. And so I think it's been one of these things that brings out some tough elements of people, but also the best in people, and the power of music is as important as it's ever been, if not more important.
Right, for sure. And there's obviously ways that people have been trying to get around this, and there's been like car shows and but I guess it's kind of not quite the same as getting inside a sweaty room and kind of jamming out.
It's true, but you know, it's funny too because like streaming is so big now, and a lot of my audience are far away. Like I hear from people all over the place. I think perhaps because of the instrumental nature, the instrumental music opens itself up in perhaps a way that music in one particular language doesn't. But it's sort of been nice to kind of be like, okay, well now it's really time to get this. So I've been like getting my sort of ability to stream refined and all this, and really been able to connect with people. So trying to make the most of it. But yeah, there's no substitute for playing a real, you know, an in-person show. But we do what we can, you know, and I think it's a beautiful thing that we're able to connect through the internet. I mean, if this had happened 30, 40 years ago, 20 years ago, even 10 years ago. So luckily we're able to do what we can. But yeah.
Has it helped you in terms of, you know, being able to kind of unplug and get away and work on your own music?
Yes, very much so. Because actually, I have a whole like music collective that I started that has become thankfully very busy, which is a good problem. But that sort of course, like everything else, had to take a pause. And I'm working very hard on my third album. And so it's been tough to balance it all. But really... And the nature of what I do, yeah, it sort of forced me / allowed me to really dig into the writing process in a new way, in a deeper way. So I'm trying to make the most of it. You know, it's a tough situation, but I'm essentially still that kid who just likes playing bass in a room. I mean, I've played I love playing shows and I love all that, but I'm happy to just work on the craft of the songs and try to tap into things like that. So I've been lucky.
Oh, fantastic. Well, I'm glad you're getting something out of it, even if we've got, you know, hard times ahead for a lot of people. I do feel like there's a lot of great music coming out because of it, and selfishly,
yes.
I get to just experience the end products of these. Well, we'd love to hear another song. So is this going to be from the second album as well?
This is actually going to be the title track of the new album.
Oh, fantastic.
So, which is called Rebirth. So, yeah, I've been tinkering with non-solo arrangements, and so this is actually going to 90% sure this is going to be a full band track.
All right.
So yeah.
Birth there by Aram Bedrosian. So you're speaking before about, you know, you kind of like locking yourself away in the room and writing out these arrangements yourself. I would have no idea where you even start with this. So please take us through a little bit about how this starts from like concept to final product.
Yeah. Well, it always it's a little different every time. I mean, there are these techniques that have a very distinct sort of feel to them. So, for example, like the percussive, if you're strumming on a bass, that might sort of inform the rhythmic feel, and then once you get that going, you sort of start moving to a beat. Then it's sort of like, well, just need some notes of some kind. So it's a very mysterious process. I mean, I have a process, but it's like very mood based. And a lot of times the effects that I'm using, right now I'm just using very basic delay effects, simple sort of pared down. But if it's a more involved sort of eerie thing, I've had songs where like the creepy reverb has basically sort of written the song. But really, because the style and the tonality and the timbre, I guess, of the genre of solo bass music is odd in and of itself, I try to focus in on really strong, simple melodies. I gravitate towards strong, simple melodies anyway. So, long story short, it's like it's strange enough as it is that you can get away with very traditional sort of chord progressions and stuff. So I try to always maintain a balance, and I always sort of ask myself, would this melody sound good on a violin? You know, would this beat of whatever it is sound good on a drum? So is it catchy? You know, because it's like I could just you could just do an interesting technique over and over again, but it just loses its flavor.
Mm-hmm.
It's like somebody just spouting fancy words at a dinner, and it just doesn't mean anything unless you're actually saying something. Actually, you mean what you're saying. So I try to make sure that the melodies mean something to me, and usually they go through like a long period of just making sure that they stay catchy. And then sometimes things happen fast. I mean, my most popular song I wrote really, really fast. It's called A Dark Light, and it sort of went quasi-viral. It brought me to a whole new audience, and wrote it pretty fast, made the video pretty fast, and the album cut is the exact cut from the video I posted on YouTube, because I was like, well, I'm not going to do it any better than this. So, and the engineer that I mixed the album with was like, the track that you recorded was good enough, like audio. So, but it was a very meaningful, like, song, and I thought it was a little too slow to be interesting, but I decided to release it anyway. And it turns out that simple melodies that are meaningful sometimes resonate with people, and so I don't know. That's
yeah, no, that was a good answer. And yeah, from what it sounds like, this second album is going to be as accessible as the first. You were saying that you wanted a solo album that wasn't just, you know, incomprehensible to the non-trained ear. Is that so? The second album kind of follows the same suit?
Yeah, so the second album, I actually had a special bass made for the second album to split the strings to be able to mix in a way that would make it sound more full sonically. So I can separate the strings, so I can treat the melody, I can mix the melody, the engineer can mix the melody like a vocal, where the lower notes can be mixed. I'm not using that system today, and I don't usually use it live, at least yet, but the third album is pushing its way into band territory, and I've put out some like full band stuff at this point. I did a live video with a violin player and a hand drummer of a composition I wrote a few years ago, and that's been really well received. A family in where were they? Somewhere in Eastern Europe during the quarantine recorded a version of this song as a family, and their little daughter was dancing. It was so beautiful. And they shared it with me a couple months ago. They wrote to me like 4 months ago and asked if they could do it. And then I was like, yes, of course. But I didn't expect it to be as good as it was. So, or as touching as it was. Like, they really took a lot of time. So, yeah, pushing my way into full band stuff. And that's sort of along the lines of asking yourself. You have to ask yourself artistically, like, what do I want to say? What do I hear? And so, most of the stuff I listen to is rock, or there's some kind of band involved. So it's kind of interesting because a lot of times people are like, oh, you must listen to tons of solo music, and I actually don't. but I appreciate it, of course. And so, yeah, it's been fun to try to expand it.
So to clarify, so you've had 2 albums out, and the third one is due to be released, or are you still in the process of making it?
Yes, it's due to be released. I'm in the process of making it as fast as I can, but I'm a perfectionist to some degree, so I'm really trying to at least. I may release it as an EP in 2 or 3 months, and split it into maybe a solo, because there are solo pieces I definitely want to put out on it, and then there's some band pieces. So it may get split into 2 things, but it's upcoming, yeah. So I have 2 that are available all over the place: iTunes, Spotify, and my website, and then the third is due out.
And you said the third, so the first 2 are pure solo.
Pure
and the
solo.
Third one, you started introducing a band. So tell me a little bit about the band. Is it different for every single track, or have you got like a set people who you keep going back to?
Well, it's been interesting. I haven't set. Yeah, it's so far it's different people on different tracks. There's one track I have called "Haunted," and there's I think they're actually kind of broke up at this point, but there was a band called Necromancer based in the Burlington area or in Vermont, and they were sort of a EDM kind of goth, and I loved the way they sounded. So I approached the drummer and one of the synth players and asked if they wanted to do this track with me, and I really loved it, and we started to work on it. So I love how that's coming out. It's kind of like a dark, brooding, kind of, I don't want to say dancey, but very heavy kind of thing. And so those are a couple people I'm working with, and then there's other people I'm sort of seeing what the vibe is at the moment, but nothing's set right now. So yeah, that's a big part of the process. So if it clicks, it'll make things go a lot faster.
So what have you learned from like your first and second album that you're bringing into your third album, and what you changing, apart from obviously bringing a band into it, which I'm assuming is a pretty major change for you?
Well, yeah, and I've recorded with bands a lot in the past, but I think the experience of making the first 2 albums, especially the second album, which was it took me 10 years to make that album.
Oh wow.
Yeah, because I wrote this song, "A Dark Light," and it was so well received, and I was kind of like, wow, how did it come out that well? Because I wrote it really fast and I released it. But then I was like, well, I better write 9 more songs that are just as good, or at least my very best effort. And I did, and it took me that long. And so the thing is, as an artist, there's the minutia of getting into every single detail, and then there's just the ability to produce work. And it doesn't take you 10 years. Like, I'm determined not to take 10 years on this album. So, yeah. I'm trying to sort of, because a lot of times, too, the raw energy of something a little more rough, it has a really nice quality. So you don't want to over-polish things. I mean, I feel like it's like saying something important, and you practice what you're going to say to somebody you love, but you don't want to over-practice it. But you want to, like, take a day to be like, is this what I really want to say? But if you take 4 days, you're going to lose what it was you were even trying to say. So just, yeah, the experience of honing in the right amount, not too much.
Well, I would love to hear another song. Which album is this from?
I guess I'll just play "A Dark Light," which is the title track of my second album.
Nice. Well, take it away. Bedrosian, and I wanted to kind of switch gears a little bit now and talk a little bit about Burlington Music Dojo.
Sure.
Because you founded that place, and
I did, yeah.
that's pretty incredible. I mean, that's a pretty famous place around Burlington for musicians. A lot of great artists play there. So, could you tell me a little bit about the history and how it got started and how it progressed?
Sure, yeah. I've been teaching for a long time. I love teaching. My mother was a teacher, so I've been instructing the bass since I was on the road for a long time. And when I got off the road, like a lot of musicians, it was sort of like, maybe I'll try giving lessons. And so found that I really enjoyed it. And so was teaching at local music stores. And then I was sort of out on my own in the corner of a painting studio, actually in this building, which is really, really funny. But then eventually I was sort of like, well, it would be really nice to have a place where other independent instructors could get together, where it would sort of be a hub for music instruction and a place where bands could rehearse. And so just a flexible music center for the community. And I'm much more of a bass player than I am a business person. So I had to go through the nuts and bolts of like, well, how do you start a business? Of course, I am sort of self-employed through all my music and this, that, and the other, but hadn't really started a business like that. So got it started, had some great musicians. The first roster of the dojo had some other, like Russ Lawton, who I'd played with, who's a fantastic drummer. He's in Trey Anastasio's band, and Bob Wagner, who plays with everybody. We had a really cool group of musicians, and everybody's schedules, and people come and go from the dojo. But over the years, it's like evolved and grown. And then actually, one of the students who had a business background was so interested in the place that after talking a long time, he became my partner in the business. And that was amazing because that boosted us up in several ways. And so over the years, it's just grown mostly word of mouth. And COVID, of course, like that was tough because in-person lessons for voice, everything stopped everywhere for a couple months. But even now we're returning with safety measures and shields. And I'm very lucky because I've been giving remote lessons for many years to people who've sort of found me through YouTube and found me. So the transition to go to remote was pretty easy for me. But yeah, the dojo's back and growing, and we just, in partnership with the local nonprofit, the Friends for A-Dog Foundation, we were awarded this huge grant to give underprivileged children music lessons, which is incredible. So that was a huge, beautiful thing to be able to we're going to be able to help 4 or 5 kids a year for 4 years get lessons who might otherwise not be able to do it. And so yeah, the dojo's been incredible, and it's I keep it somewhat separate from my music, but I love it. A lot of musicians don't teach, and a lot of teachers don't play music, and it's sort of, you have to have the components of a teacher, and of course you have to be knowledgeable about your instrument, but you have to be patient and enjoy. And it's funny too, because a lot of times people, especially if they hear my solo work, and a lot of times people will say, well, I didn't think you'd want a beginner, and I'm like, of course I do. I love teaching beginners, and so I enjoy the process of sharing that and seeing someone, because when I was a kid, I was a little bit lost when I started to play the bass, and I've never lost the appreciation for what it can do and what it can mean to connect with other people in a band like that, but also to find your voice like that. And so I firmly believe that a lot of times it's the quiet person in the room, and maybe the quiet kid who seems a little shy, that often has something incredible to say. And so that spirit is at the heart of the dojo, and I've been lucky enough to work with all these other wonderful instructors there now, and it's grown into this beautiful thing, and it's continuing to grow. And COVID has forced us to evolve a little bit, but it's good. We're marching on, and we're still growing, and so that's that.
Yeah, and so glad it's there. I'm so glad it's kind of part of this whole complex, and yeah, I've heard only good things. Is there any people in the years that you've taught that really shone for you? Any kind of a memorable person that's come kind of through the dojo?
A lot of memorable people have come through the dojo. It's tough to single anybody out. Touring musicians. No, I'm just going to say everybody.
No, right.
Yeah, sorry. I'm
Like
kind of drawing a blank because it's just a collage of incredible memories. So yeah.
like a proud father. You know, you don't have one favorite child. All of them are your favorite.
Yeah, and then of course, uh, yeah, there are students who go on. I've had a lot of students go on to become professional musicians, and that's always a beautiful thing. And then you have students who are gifted with perfect pitch, but then you also have those students who just dig in their heels and they just make the best of it, and it means a lot to them, and those are just as gratifying. So it's all good to me.
And finally, I want to ask you a little bit about the guitar because I know it's quite a special piece of equipment. Would you like to tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, so this is a cool story. This was made by this German luthier named Jens Ritter, who, since I've known him, has become very famous. I think he has a bass in the Smithsonian.
Oh, wow.
A bass he made for Phil Lesh from the Grateful Dead, and that's a cool story too, because I was there when Phil Lesh ordered that bass, and then I played that bass the following year in California before he got it. I put strings on it. My friend was like, "Do you mind putting strings on this? I have to deliver it to Phil." You know. But anyway, yeah, this bass is very special. This is my second Ritter bass. The first one I was lucky enough to find on eBay, and then I wrote to him. We became friends. I put out my first album, and that was one of the nicest connections I made through my first album, was the strong connection with him. And I think the solo work features the sound of the instruments in a way he really appreciates, and so we became good friends, and he likes what I do. So this was custom made for me, and it's just very special. It's just got a bunch of sick features, and really, I got this in 2008, and it's had numerous modifications over the years, and I'm proud to say this is its final state. Yeah, I can't really ask for anything else now. It plays so nice, and it's kind of like, I can pick up a $100 bass and just have a wonderful time, but I have been playing long enough now to appreciate how unbelievably nice this one is. And so, yeah, it can split the strings, which is a very unusual feature, but for what I do, it's actually really cool. And it's just got, yeah, it's like one piece of burl maple, and it's just got gold frets. And this inlay, a friend of mine, my designer, designed this inlay with the golden ratio and my logo, and it's just like, it's a little over the top, but whatever. You only live once.
Hey, I mean, this is literally your profession. I feel like
Yeah.
if you're going to splurge on anything, this is the good thing to splurge on.
Yeah.
Did you pick the maple because of the Vermont connection, or was that just a happy coincidence?
Which connection, sorry?
The fact you picked a maple, was that because Vermont, or?
Oh, Vermont, yeah. A little bit, but actually the first one of these I had was maple that I got on eBay. And originally I was like, well, I just like another one just like this. But being the artist that he is, and I visited his shop in Germany. I was finally able to go hang out with him at his shop in Germany. He's crazy. He has like bodies dipped in wine and aged in wine. And he has like one covered in crystals that Lady Gaga owns one of the 5. And it was a wild time to visit him. But being the artist that he is, he wanted to do something different with this one. And I was like, yeah, I mean, do what you do. So the first incarnation was really, really nice, and a lot of the recordings on A Dark Light are from that first, 1.0 version of this bass, and then some of the other recordings are with the 2.0 version of this bass on A Dark Light. So now it's yeah. I mean, I don't know what to say. It feels incredible. I don't own a McLaren car or a Bugatti, but if I did, I would imagine this is what it feels like.
Yeah.
It's a very special instrument, and he puts a lot of love into what he does, and it's a beautiful friendship we have, and I'm happy to play this bass.
So do you feel this is the final bass you'll ever have, or is this?
Well, it's certainly the final. Well, it's the final bass I'll ever need. I don't know if it's the final bass I'll ever have. But I'm a 4-string. I had a 6-string bass in high school, which is just bigger. And a lot of bass players ask me, would you like more strings? How come you don't play a 5-string or a 6-string? And they get wild now. You can get up to like 12 strings. They look like a gag.
I've seen them. They look ridiculous.
Yes, and I've played them, and and I think this is an art, and whatever allows someone to say what they want to say is exactly what they should have. But I don't know. I like trying to do what I do with a 4-string. It forces me to yield. Like harmonics, like I have to work to get notes higher than this, and if I want to go lower, so I do some altered tunings and I do a lot of harmonics. I try to harvest as much sound out of this somebody once, I mean, a lot of people have said that the limitations set you free.
Mm-hmm.
And so within these limitations, I feel completely free. It's nice.
Nice. Oh well, we got about time for one more song. What have you got for us?
Let's see. I think I'll play. This is a song from my second album, A Dark Light, called Almost Home.
Almost Home by Aram Bedrosian. Thank you so much for coming in this evening. Really, really love this.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
No, not at all. Join us next week at the same time, same place, 105.9 The Radiator, for Modest. But that's all for tonight. This has been The Rocket Shop. I've been your host, Tom Proctor. Good night.